Self-love is for women, and men do not need self-love. You'll hear this a lot nowadays of like, oh, you're good as you are. You should love yourself. Stop being so hard on yourself. I think it's bullshit. And I think most men, deep down, if they're honest with themselves, they think it's bullshit too. The best example of this is if you go on Instagram, maybe even TikTok. I mean, I'm not on TikTok because I'm not a degenerate, but let's just say Instagram. If you look at self-improvement advice on there, it's very different between men and women. Very different. Women, it's usually like, you're a queen, you're good as you are, you're amazing, you're valuable. And with men, it's like, you're not enough. You suck. You're not everything that you could be. You're a loser. And so women are always dumbfounded or always just confused as to why men are gravitated toward this content. And it's for this very simple reason of what I stated earlier, is that self-love isn't for men. We don't need self-love. We need self-respect. Those two things are very, very different. Self-respect and self-love are very different. Now, I would argue that some men in different eras needed a bit more self-love, but we're living in a very feminine era. And I don't say that with contempt. I don't, because the feminine is important, just as important as the masculine. However, there needs to be balance, all right? So when I say that we're living in a more feminine world, what does that mean? There's no global conflict, there's no global strife. We might perceive it that way, but objectively speaking, we are not. We are living in a very decadent age. Sure, finances and stuff are difficult, but nobody, at least nobody watching this video, presumably, in first world English-speaking countries are afraid of like some sort of existential threat that might destroy their country, might destroy their family, might destroy themselves, all right? And if there is, that's something that's voluntary. If you want to put yourself in physical danger, like joining the military or whatever, that's something that's voluntary. It's not mandatory. But if we look across all of history, it's always just been conflict all the time. Conflict, war, constantly. Whenever there was any sort of peace, it was usually very short-lived. We're living in a very long period of peace right now, basically since World War II. So it's almost been 100 years of peace. And so what ends up happening is we live in a more comfortable world, which is great, right? Who likes war? We don't want to be a part of war. Like, totally reasonable, all right? But it comes at a cost. The cost is this: the fact that all of history has had conflict, war. We have been selectively bred to be warriors. We are descendant from the successful tribes, the successful warriors who passed on their genes. Men are inherently warlike, all right? And so when you're inherently warlike, it's like the whole thing of like the warrior in the garden. It's like, okay, like this isn't our natural state. This isn't our natural nature. For women, it's more their natural nature to be in peace. So for them, since their natural nature is to try to seek peace, to try to have peace, then self-love makes perfect sense, right? Like yes, be as you are, stay in the present. You're good as you are. But with men, we are more focused on the future. We're more focused on conflict. We're more focused on achieving greatness. As Ralph Waldo Emerson said, greatness looks to the future. And so if we're more future focused, then why in the hell would, just love yourself the way you are? Why would that appeal to us? It doesn't. Instead, what we want to do is become a respectable version of ourselves, to have self-respect. That's where confidence comes from as a man. The only way in which you're going to get that is to have a future vision of who you want to become. Notice that you aren't that person yet and strive to become that person. This is why I believe that the self-overcoming instinct, the sacrificial instinct, is much stronger in men than it is for women. Women inherently live more in the present. Men inherently live more in the future. And our proclivity for violence, our proclivity for conflict, I think is sort of an extension of that future focus, an extension of us trying to overcome ourselves to become stronger versions of ourselves, and then comparing that new, stronger version of ourselves against others. This is what strives greatness. This is what strives innovation. This is why men tend to be the ones who invent all of the new cool stuff, that tend to work themselves to death and build all these different things and a lot of times they don't even actually see the fruits of their labor. I mean, how many men have gone off to war and never seen the peace that they were able to achieve because of their hard-earned efforts. And to add to that, is that really self-love? Putting yourself in the meat grinder back in World War II just for an idea, just for your country? Is that self-love? Or is that a love for something higher? Is that a love for an idea, sacrificing yourself for something in the future that you'll never see? That's antithetical to self-love. You're literally sacrificing your entire being for an idea instead of preserving yourself. And so when I see self-improvement advice that's just general, it always tends to skew toward the feminine. One, because there's more women who are drawn to self-improvement than men. That might sound a bit surprising, but if you actually look at the statistics, it's more women than it is men. But it always is skewed toward more that self-love type of thing, right? And so you have to be very careful with whatever content you consume online with self-improvement and whatnot, because a lot of it's going to skew a bit more toward that feminine, when in reality, most guys need the exact opposite. If you are a masculine man, bred for war, basically, across generations, and you're living in a time of peace, then if you try to be more peaceful in a time of peace, it's going to feel antithetical to your nature. It's going to feel like something's missing. So what you have to do instead is actually go a little bit more toward that violent side, a little bit more toward that side of conflict, ideally without waging war and without like destroying people around you. So one thing Nietzsche talked about in Beyond Good and Evil, I think is very relevant today, is that he believes that certain affects need to have a drainage dish to express themselves. So he believed that even the masters, the noblemen, they still needed to express these emotions of cruelty, of envy toward other people, because that's just part of being human, more specifically in their case, part of being a man. And so throughout most of history, that was through war, right? But in the modern day, where, you know, most of us are a lot more educated now and we understand that we want to have more peace, right? Maybe just perpetually being at war isn't the best thing ever. I know it took us like millennia to freaking figure that out, the geniuses that we are as humans. But there are ways in which you can still achieve that psychological state and still live in a peaceful world. So you can literally have the best of both worlds. And I talk about this in so many videos, but the solution, I believe, is shadow work, where because you've sort of repressed these masculine sides of yourself, this side that strives for greatness, this side that strives for conflict, for violence, because you've always been told that it's bad because it's dangerous for society to push that stuff and say it's good and okay, especially in a peaceful world. You then repress all of those things, and then you end up projecting it or fantasizing about it through different mediums. So for example, the movie Fight Club, the reason that it became so popular is because it was about men expressing their masculine sides and not feeling judged, right? They're living in a peaceful world, but they're not bred for peace. They're bred for war. So they wanted to let out that warrior side of themselves. They went a little bit too far in that movie, but there's ways in which you can simulate that same exact thing. And shadow work is the way to do it. So I usually don't promote my own videos within videos too much, but I posted a video pretty recently about shadow work, and I think it's really good. I got a lot of good feedback on it. So go ahead, I'll link it somewhere around my head. Go ahead and watch it. And if I wasn't able to convince you here that self-love isn't for men and that self-respect is more important, that video itself will definitely convince you. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Go ahead and check out that video, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.